today we have Timo Spekkens, and he's some of your mentors. Some of you have Timo for a mentor, and he's just amazing. And he'll do wide open awareness practices, and he's just a big landing in your heart delight. For those of you who have him for a mentor, you know that. So I'd like to introduce my colleague and my friend, Timo Spekkens. We have hiked together, we have meditated together, um, we have eaten lunch together, and he is one of the most respected teachers in the tradition of open awareness, and in Buddhist tradition it's Dzogchen, and in a everything tradition, in all theologies, in no theologies, it's opening our awareness, right? And so he's going to introduce more about himself, but he's a senior teacher in that tradition, and he leads groups, um, and he'll put his group link at the end of his talk. So he'll guide us in a practice and talk a little bit, and then if you have questions about the difference between focused and concentration awareness and wide open, and anything he says, they'll have room for your questions in the chat box or unmute yourself. So thank you for coming, Timo. Appreciate it so much, and excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me, and I love to be here. And how wonderful to get such a sweet introduction. Can't can't deny that the ego starts shining a little in that moment. Go, oh, is that me? And then ultimately, really, it's not about slaying the ego or transcending the ego. It's like it's all about integration. I feel, so then coming to realize that the ego is the um, agency of creativity or compassionate, skillful means in the world. So let it shine when it wishes to. Just don't let it rule your life. And yes, it's so kind of you, Gail, to introduce me as your friend, and we had some wonderful times together. But I also want everybody to know that I did the TMF program a few years ago, 2020. It's not that long ago. Um, we were the COVID TMF, and Gail was my mentor, and I could have not been helped more kindly and nourishingly, and so thank you, Gail. And so when Gail comes calling, I'm here and there. So yes, I'm delighted to be with you. I'm looking around the screen a little bit, some old friends and new faces. Thank you for coming. You know, this is not a small thing what we do in these places. When people act on the wish to see who they really are in the world, I'm always so moved, and having seen the beautiful effects of these practices, um, is just amazing. Oh, I have to say a few things about myself. Okay, then. So I was kind of a late starter. Not until I was 40. I mean, I always talked about meditating and made little attempts, but when I was 48, I just jumped in. I went to a 10-day retreat, and it was silent, and I was going, oh, this is going to be quite something. But I was so moved, what happened to me in that space, that at first I thought it would be difficult to be in 10 days of silence, and then when I came out, it had just completely changed my life, and I was actually kind of crying for having to leave that space because obviously attachment had arisen to that experience, and I haven't stopped since then. By now I've been on retreat for about a year and a half, and I started studying in the Buddhist Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions, and after some years, they asked me to lead some meditation groups, and more they allowed me to hold people's hearts and minds in those spaces. And then, when I indeed realized the incredible repercussions of these practices that are social, and yeah, realizing that you are working this month on um, the social part of the interconnected part of these practices, um, I just realized what an incredible, beautiful thing it is. So what I did then is I felt that I was a little bit preaching to the choir in that environment. So that's why I came to UCLA and the TMF, and um, you know, kind of expecting a bit of a stuffy academic environment, and then coming to realize that in many ways it was just as loving of an environment, maybe even if not more than some of the other places I had been. So so that's where I'm at. So I have a group that I lead, and when I'm asked, I come, and so here I am. So thank you so much. So what am I moved by is that most people, when they start paying attention, have this explicit or maybe implicit wish towards awakening. So then, awakening from what? Awakening from the ever repeating, ego protective, habitual patterns, kind of the bad ego, the not knowing that the ego is ruling my life. Yet, awakening sounds like another project. So, even that, just the complete freshness of beingness in life, awakening, you know, letting go of the awakening or the enlightenment project, or even the self improvement project for a few moments. How is that? Just coming to rest, just stepping out of autopilot and the habitual mind. So, how many times do we need that chase, that same sequence of thoughts and feelings? So, maybe if you wish, you could join me for a beautiful deep breath. Just being present. And yes, my joy is indeed exploring who or what it is that is mindful. So we're mindful, but who or what is it? So we'll have a look at some of the repercussions of these practices. And so our intent is to cause concentric cycles of kindness to ripple throughout space and time, and in this Zoom room and beyond. And so I would like you to maybe listen a bit more with the heart and not the comparing ears. Like, oh, that's interesting, that resonates, just let everything go. And I really wish you, for the whole time that we are together, for you to be beautifully present as much as you can. I intend most of what I'm going to be saying to be a guided meditation, and for some of you that are not used to longer meditations, just keep your mind as you wish. Just don't be distracted too much. So I'm from a tradition where we often say, better a bunch of shorties than one longie, and then sprinkling our days and our lives with awareness. So, and then we have mixing practices to not just be present on our meditation cushion, but being present in our lives more frequently and for longer durations. And then feeling sad and feeling happy are temporary events that are always passing, and yet at all times, I'm here. The function of meditation is to simply give us more time to experience the movement of experience and the movements of events and the stillness of the one who is present. So no waiting to be present. See if you can have that simultaneous mind of the sounding of my voice with apparent information and still knowing that you are present. We often see when we go on retreat, and even on a short retreat like the one you are on today and yesterday, that there is one that is meditating and one that is searching for information. And the depth of beingness cannot be found through information. If you can only be what it is that you truly are, but you can know that you are that. So, what is this primary experience of being alive? Prior to thoughts and feelings and emotions and all experiences, there is this I amness, right? This this sense of presence. You don't need this. When I say I am, I don't need a thought that says I am, I am, I am. Right? And I amness is basically self-evident. So take another breath and notice that even between two thoughts, and between the kaleidoscope of emotions and feelings, it's all suffused with beingness. So the first exclamation of a being in the world is I am. And then of course we can then discuss really who is this I that says I am. If we have time for that, we come to realize and maybe explore that even that I is a bit of a thought, and we come to rest in this pure stream of being, this stream of spontaneous presence, this presencing into beingness, which can be known and can be known throughout all experience. And then when we start knowing this space and we start feeling this wish to hold beings around us and to also know this deeper place of wisdom and compassion. And in some traditions there's this innate ever compassion, or it's fostered over time. We don't have to discuss if it's fostered over time or if it's innately present within us. We just the fact that world peace is sitting on your seat because of these practices is already such a beautiful thing. And coming to realize that the vast majority of people live in fear of their own minds. Most people really believe that if they look within, what they'll find is something that is very painful, negative, or demonic, even this place of unknown fear. And so people literally spend their lives fleeing from their own experience and distracting themselves in endless ways. And humankind has taken distraction to unprecedented levels. We've become so amazingly skilled in our culture with masterful distraction, which has no other precedent in history. Yet, if a wonderful finding is, when we turn our attention inward, we discover that who we are is not only more than we think, but it is more than we can think. It is more than we can think. It's vast and ever present. So be what it is that you can think. And so we actually look right back into our human beingness, and for a while we let go of the usual human overdoingness, and just by paying attention to our beingness or presencing as awareness, we discover a very deep inherent freedom by acquiring a completely new relationship with any and all experience we encounter in our lives. And not only that, we can also then pay attention to what is it that knows our experience? A soft, ever sweet subjectivity. Can you really feel that? That you are that which knows your experience prior to thought? And then I'm that which arises, but I'm that which knows. And there's a sweet modulation and integration in that play. And then from that realization and practicing, putting some muscle on being the presence of awareness knowingly, our own hearts and minds become a place of refuge instead of a place of fear. And that is the most beautiful thing of all this. The trusting of our own mind is a mind which relaxes into the flow of apparent reality. A mind which recognizes that we don't have to be on constant alert about our own mind, or even the deeper nature of reality. Yes, the world is difficult and sad and challenging and threatening at times. But yet, the more we open up to the deeper layers within, the more we can trust ourselves in the flow of being, in the flow of our lives. It has deep repercussions for our well-being and all those around us. Because usually we do carry that subtle layer of anxiety within us, and it reverberates through our relationships and their relationships. And so, how we keep our mind is once again not a small thing. Actually, when I say not a small thing, these practices are not a small thing, or paying attention, it's actually Professor Marv Belzer that often says that. So I sometimes quote without giving credit, and I apologize for that. But so then, within that anxiety, when we're in community, it often pushes us into the old, to becoming the subject again to the old conditioning. You know, what will people think? What if I mess up? I then just come back to allowing myself to recognize at the deepest level that I wish and actually want the greatest good for our community. And by addressing the deeper levels of the innate or fostered goodness in our hearts, we really do want the best for everyone participating in this online group, and then bouncing it out boundlessly for all beings. Yes, we all have our fears, and our impulsive reactions get in the way of the expressiveness of our own loving hearts a lot of the time. But underneath that, below the surface churnings of the psyche, our deeper nature in which we more and more trust really wishes the best for everyone. So just right now, open your heart to everyone on this call. Just sitting this literally from the heart, just like allow it just to open, and allow the fact that everyone on this virtual family, allow that to resonate within you. This virtual family wants the very best for you too. Touching your heart. Every single person in this Zoom room in this moment is in touch with the fact that they want the very best for you. Just letting go. And sometimes when we do these somewhat manifest thought patterns, deliberate mind wanderings into compassion, it might sometimes feel a little contrived. That was an issue I had for a while. And then I had one teacher tell me, there is no pure motivation. There is always this little black dot in the yin and yang. So for us to be expressing ourselves lovingly, we don't have to come into a radiant white field of only shining white pure perfection. It includes everything that we are. And then this trusting of our own mind and the simultaneous view of my experience, that which knows my experience. So the trusting of that which knows my experience and the experience itself fosters the diminishing of negative mind states and the flourishing of positive mind states. And when I used to think like, oh, these Buddhists have it all figured out, and then, like I said earlier, I came to realize that no, in any environment, this is what happens. People become kinder and wish the best for you. So the flourishing of positive mind states and the diminishing of negative mind states kind of is an automaticity within these practices over time. And so the diminishing of negative mind states and the flourishing of positive mind states is called Sangye in Tibetan mind training traditions. And then another translation of this is the Buddha. Because why be a Buddha? Why be a Buddhist if you can be a Buddha? Right? So why not be awakened right now? Not just constantly looking at all the methods and everything we need to do. Just be awakened right now. Be compassion arisen on your seat right now. Maybe take a breath on that. And then coming to, you are the one you have been waiting for. Yeah. So that is some of the realizations of relational mindfulness. We can't calculate the impact we have on other people and beings. Just from getting to know our own hearts and minds more intimately, just from that, not really paying attention to what it feels like to be us right now, we become so profoundly familiar with the tenderness of the human condition. It's so deeply moving and touching being human. And then realizing that what can our hearts do in those moments but open. So maybe all a bit inspired by the Bodhisattva vow, but we come to understand that love is only found through loving. And then indeed that wish to not just be confined within the little what about me mind. We usually hold our minds so tightly we don't even notice others. And yes, we all might have a completely unique experience of the world, but the spacious, open, knowing quality of the mind is identical. So there's not just the recognition of the tenderness of the human condition in which we are connected, but we literally have this space of mind which is completely the same thing, consciousness. And so when researchers look into the creativity of children, they all end up rating as genius. At every grade level, there's a diminishing of their creativity, and we literally school the spontaneity, the playfulness, and indeed the creativity right out of our children, although that wouldn't be a complete correct statement. Our spontaneous creativity, our boundless innovation, our unimaginable resourcefulness are just veiled by the conditioned egoic patterns. The unending spoon-fed stories of who we are not, so we may tend more effectively to the ever-moving production lines. Over time, by allowing this innate primordial creative openness to facilitate this beautiful, universal, open, spacious heart and mind, makes us kind of be the boundless wholeness in our lives, at the center of our lives. And then we come to realize once again that maybe our ultimate project, although I keep saying this is not a project, it's the being in the process of realization while being realized, for the benefit of all, for the awakening of all beings, perhaps the highest and most profound aspiration the human mind has ever conceived. So if I ask you, what does it feel like to be you right now? Who or what are you? I am what it feels like to be me today. And indeed, what it feels like to be me today comes and goes. Yet that primordial I amness prior to that experience, or suffusing all that feeling of what it is like to be me, ever present, is this I amness that burst into being when you were born. It's the same I amness when you were a toddler, a teenager, going to school, exploring relationships. Having breakfast this morning, I am this. I can know my true essence at all times. It's sometimes difficult for us to just be. Most of the time there is a stretching at the edge of the now, wanting it to become the next now, which basically means we live in becoming instead of being. So that if that is the life that we lead, which sadly is the life of most beings on this planet right now, most humans. We live a life of becoming, and we never become what we wish to become. And then what we wish to become is the being that's already here right now. So when you dig deeper into some of these esoteric traditions, they are often what they call supernatural claims. If they are or are not, is not what we are concerned with here now. But walking through walls pales in comparison that consciousness exists. We take the fact that we are conscious so for granted. The one thing that you cannot doubt about yourself is that you are conscious right now. Please notice that you are conscious right now of the fact that you are conscious. The personal identity that you are momentarily exists, but prior to this person, this what it feels like to be us right now, there's this changeless, maybe even timeless dimension of pure being or consciousness, ever accessible at any decibel level, in every moment of experience. So we can be aware that we are aware, which has no observable qualities, and it's so easily overlooked and therefore ignored. It's so transparent, you look right through it. It's not outside of ourselves, so you can't just gain it. It's just always right there. They sometimes speak about when yogis or masters or gurus or whatever become enlightened, they burst out laughing because it was so apparent and so right there that they go like, how the hell did I miss that all this time? So don't look for for something to happen in the future or in some traditions 10,000 years from now. Right now, not waiting for trumpets to start sounding in the sky. I have become enlightened. The trumpets are sounding right now in your heart. This is it. This is it. This is not transcending life. This is it. This is your life. And then even all difficult mind states, they don't all dissolve right away. Even fear for us in the Western society is a doorway to intimacy with our deepest guarded feelings. And then all difficult mind states become the nourishment of compassion and wisdom. We know what it feels like to have a difficult life at times, and instead of contracting into that, we just make it be the nourishment of our skillful means of our compassionate heart. And then we learn to move the fear from being a subject to being an object, which is great, a great example of awakening growth, to move difficult mind states from a subject to an object. And then when you step back to experience the totality of your experience in like a metacognitive aha feeling, there's this aha-ness of beingness. And then we learn to sit in the continuity of aha, it's kind of and then there's no more waiting for magic, like I said, because it's so amazing that consciousness exists. Look, experience this fact that everything that's arising in this boundless sphere of being is amazing. So if I ask you right now, real simply, if I ask you to be present, where do you go? If I ask you, are you aware? Where do you go? If I ask you, who or what are you? What do you do or don't do? And I'm not asking anything complex, just be the human being. You know, we're so good at all the human activities, but the being gets overlooked. It's right there, human being, and then who spends time just being? So yeah, being aware can be just a bit of a slippery slope. I'm going to ask you to just be, but just allow, even if distraction comes for a moment, just return and notice, ah, I am. So what is awareness? Awareness is not compound, but yet we could speak of it in two perspectives. It is being and it is knowing. The knowing of being. Do you know that you are? So not necessarily the usual meditation, although I welcome you to do any meditation you wish. But instead of using attention, sending out a beacon of attention to an object and holding it tight there to not be distracted, actually let attention come back to its source and come to rest in the presence of awareness. So resting attention, yet not being distracted. So then I like to say, please, right now, be the presence of spacious, luminous, loving awareness, knowingly, awakefully. Spacious because it's so limitless, there's enough room for all things and beings and a universe to arise in all its splendor. Luminous because consciousness or awareness shines the light of knowing on all things and then in our practice back upon itself. And loving because awareness welcomes absolutely all experience. Happiness is no other than consciousness. It is simply the presence of consciousness knowingly. Consciousness knowing itself deliberately. And not the gleeful, passing kind of happiness, but more a sense of an absence of lack. Of being okay. with the way things are. One more time. Please, right now, be the presence of spacious, luminous, loving awareness, knowingly, awakefully, undistractedly, right now. So don't have awareness not be so heavy. Maybe allow awareness to descend along the cheekbones and the throat and the chest bones and come to rest in the heart. The head is the office and the heart is home. And then just literally aware from the heart, like a boundless heart, not confined by your anatomy. the I that I am is aware that I am. See if you can experience your sphere of being, presence, kind of go beyond the boundaries of your anatomy, either literally if you wish, or as a metaphor for experiencing the spacious mind. Saturate the space all around with awareness. Unlike regular space, this space has a knowing quality. And then if we have kind of this open, spacious, boundless whole presence, then if everybody is this spacious and boundless, there's an overlap in our world of being. So where can you be where we are not? Which reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh saying his favorite mantra was, "I'm here for you, darling." When we're in this open presence, not confined by our egoic protectiveness, then any being that comes into our realm is the immediate wish from our heart. What can I be for you? This practice creates so much space in our hearts and minds that it's just a wide open yes for compassion to arise. Step out of our habitual patterns, step out of self-delusion, and learn to honor the enormity of difficulties and suffering in the world, not just as a hopeless, deep suffering empathy, becoming a deer in the headlights of life, but actually a stimulus for ethical lives and for goodness itself. And if you have a little bit of, an issue with the sincerity of goodness presence, know that if you really look in your heart, there's always this wish for happiness. So realizing that all beings have that wish for happiness, and realizing that that sweet little reaching for this loving open joy is just so present in all beings. And we realize then that love is only found through loving. So I sometimes call this the one-step program for thinkaholics. One step from here to right here in the heart, living a life from the heart. And then we end up experiencing all things as beauty and all beings as love. So while you're staying completely beautifully present from now on for the rest of your life, I want to kind of improvise on one little thing I heard Alan Watts say on a YouTube, and I love it so much. So let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream, and that you could, for example, have the capacity within one night to dream 100 years of time, or any length of time you want. And you would naturally, as you would begin this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes, you would have every kind of pleasure, such as flying or sensualing or whatever it is that your heart would desire. And after several nights of 100 years of total pleasure, you would say, well, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Now I wish something to happen to me that I don't know what it's going to be. And we would really love that and come out of it and say, wow, that was a close call, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further way out of control gambles as what you would dream. And finally you would dream where you are right now. So let's take another beautiful choreographed, loving, intent breath together. And decontract. Put some muscle on decontraction and on non-distractiveness. And you can give it some form, get this going. Which is not an ending or a beginning. It's just a reference point for us to be present and kind. So it's always powerful if people share, if they experience something or a lack of it, or and if you have a question. Or I always really like somebody, people mentioning if they have like any experience that's a little new or a different perspective. So you can either type it or unmic or whatever you wish. I don't know if people have the capacity to unmic themselves, can they?
Yes, they can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Oh, I see. For we live in becoming instead of living in being. Yeah, I know that's a good one. um, I read that somewhere. I don't remember where. Okay, Jesse. Hi. Good to see you.
Hi, Timo. Thank you for your guidance today. It was beautiful. I love what you said, and I usually don't have uh, too much well, I don't usually in a sitting practice. I don't. Well, I guess I don't know. Okay, what I'm trying to say is it kind of made me a little bit overly emotional, whatever that means. When you said be what it is that you can't think, I love that a lot because I'm always looking for other ways in my practice to sort of, get into the open awareness where you sort of start to lose your head because I think that would be great to do.
Yeah.
you know.
So why do you think you became emotional in that moment?
Well, I think, since we exacerbate and cause so much of our own suffering through the repeated thought processes and the narratives that we attach to our feelings and the narratives that we attach to our thoughts, that line was just so nice and empowering and liberating that it just sort of reminded me that we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, that those things are just modifications of the mind, that they just come and they go. And it was a reassuring and very poetic line that hit me right in that heart space.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. That everlasting tendency for negative bias when you just let it roll. that little troublemaker. Thank you, Jesse. So what does it feel like to be you? Does it feel different now than an hour ago? It feels it feels hard to trust that letting go, but it also feels amazingly simple when you do. Yeah, it's both, right? It's that's this life. But the beauty of this is that you can realize the simplicity while it's not easy, or it's easy while it's not simple, whatever, something like that. It's That's the beauty of it. So simultaneous mind, kind of being, gazing out from the heart into the world, being present, and noticing all experience and beings, while being folded within a little bit into that I amness. And then we didn't really have time to dissolve that I in the I am, which is like really fun to do too. It's pure beingness, but there's so much time left. No, no time to be distracted, but an ocean of time to be present. I've never felt, thank you, Paige. I've never felt such abundant happiness and sadness simultaneously. Yeah, feeling the whole kaleidoscope of who you are, just arising, and then, you know, not grasping for happiness, not avoiding sadness. Sadness, I call it the flower of love, and this, yeah, I think Matthew says that that a love that is not informed by sadness is a naive love. What does it feel like to be enlightened? It feels like to be you right now. It's only the limiting beliefs that get in the way. So yeah, that's a little bit. Yeah, of course, there's over time there's an unfolding. So actually, in an hour can't address it all. But if when the next time you meditate, at some point you think suddenly, brighten the mind, brighten, and that brightening the mind is not necessarily amping up your concentration. Just remember to play with that. Just brighten the mind. I like to sometimes call that out when I'm meditating by myself. Oh, there's a hand up. Hi, Glenn. Thank you,
I
Sharon.
forgot to lower it. I typed my question in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
I loved your talk there, but you said a lot of what you said was very dense. There was, I had a hard time following your logic, but once I figured it out, it really resonated. I would like to learn more along the lines of what you talked about. Can you recommend books or videos or?
Um, well, it depends a little bit, and you're in the perfect place. You're in IPP, right? So there's a lot of guidance right there, and I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit at this moment in IPP with going for natural awareness because that's what I do. Um, and it's of course all on me. If it was a little dense, I have a tendency to maybe sometimes be a little too wordy, and because I'm so excited, and I try to teach everything I know in an hour. It's like I'm still evolving into being more transparent and clear. But I will type my email address, and any of you. Sorry, I can type and talk. Okay. Um, so you can reach out because then we can. I will talk with anybody really. I will come on Zoom. Anybody that wishes to learn about mind, and if you think that our co-resonance would mean something for you, I will get on Zoom with you and spend a little time, or you can email me And I can't really answer you because I have to feel a little bit of where your interest lies, where you are in your mind and heart right now in your practice. So so just get in touch and we'll discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Looking for raised hands now. Okay. Yeah, so don't hesitate to be in touch. That's what we are about. We hold each other.
Um, Hi Timo, I have a question.
Hi. Oi.
I was I've been trying to formulate that question, so I was like, okay, don't overthink your question, just start talking. So I will try to make sense of my thought pattern. Um, so I and just so everyone knows, Timo is my mentor, so he actually introduced me to open awareness, and it's not a practice that I've been practicing before. So it feels very new and very interesting, and like it's an experiment. And so when I do it, I have this beautiful tree right in front of me. I'm lucky, like in front of my window, and very often I just when I open myself, it kind of feels like the world is encompassing me and I am encompassing everything else. It just kind of feels like this. Yeah, that's the probably the best that I can phrase it. But then when I go through everyday life, I actually really liked what I believe I'm not Jesse said before. Like it just feels like when I go through everyday life, I narrow my being to everyday life problems and like situations and what happens, and that narrowing makes it way more difficult to feel that that openness makes it much easier not to get entangled in all the nitty gritty of life, and that openness still makes me aware of the nitty gritty, but it doesn't entangle me. And I'm just wondering, I sometimes feel that openness when, especially in white spaces, like when I'm at the beach with my dogs, or if I like hike, probably also in nature, it just feels much more tangible. And I'm wondering if the end goal is also, probably that's my question, like feeling that openness all the time in our life. You know what I mean? Like, can we go through our life and our everyday situations and still have that quality of openness, day to day, moment by moment? I
Definitely.
think
Yeah.
that's the best that I can phrase it.
No, that was brilliant. So yes, that openness is ever available, but having the little "what about me" mind, like I like to call it, putting the blinders on, this myopic vision. We contract a little bit in the pain, and then then we just want to dig into our habitual pattern because there is a certain recognition there of safety, which is like contract because it's not true. So it's this openness. So they call this actually in the Mahamudra mind training tradition. They call it the path of spacious openness, or the path of spacious freedom. So yes, as you know from whatever practice you do with meditating, is that we put in kind of muscle on our attention, right? So there is, for longer durations and a higher frequency of time, we become present in our lives, and then ultimately, yeah, you become present more and more, because there's no doubt, just rest that if you're doing the practice as you do, and I know you do because we have talked, and any of you are like in IPP, and don't think that's a small thing. It's amazing, right? So you know yes, we get a little frustrated at times and we contract again in an old pattern, but at the same time, yes, we can lead our life more and more from this open space. I actually had some experience with that because I had some difficulties with my body, I had a surgery on my spine in November, and then I had another surgery. I had my gallbladder removed a couple months later. So there was a lot of pain because it's around the central nervous system. So me, big mouth, like, oh, path of spacious freedom. I was laying there, quite often, like all curled up in the, why me kind of experience. So yes, that's life. There's like a kind of this oscillation, but for sure, I kept just waking up in it. I would just like be completely present, and I would place my attention right at the heart of the pain, right, and just shift the pain from the unwanted to just like an energy. And I was able to do that a lot of the time. And but we're all going to contract back into not the path of spacious freedom, but to answer the question, yes, we can lead a life of openness, and you all have already experienced that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be an IPP, right? Even if it's kind of like subconscious or something like that. I mean, why would you come to groups like this and spend time? It's going like you've come to a realization that this is a path you want to be on, right? So that means there is already an openness there. Sometimes it's a little bit relative. It can be more open. I don't know. And openness is actually a more contemporary translation of emptiness, which is less nihilistic, right? So open and spacious and free. So actually experiencing your life from the field of awareness instead of like just a little pattern. Okay. Thank you. It's
Eileen and Nick in the
yeah,
chat box.
yeah. I could talk about non-duality, yeah, in 30 seconds. Although Zoe was kind of mentioning that she said she was sitting in awareness and then sees the tree and kind of then realized that the tree is arising within that space of openness or awareness, and realizing that really not just our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are arising in our sphere of being, but also all perceptions. And then not having, so you can kind of practice. That's why I was saying become spacious, right, beyond the boundary of your anatomy. So gazing upon your life from the field of awareness, so it's more open and spacious. Now, of course, it comes from a non-dual tradition that believes that everything is arising as consciousness, from within consciousness, or from being, within being. Okay, so it can either be a metaphor for those that feel that all consciousness arises in the brain, or it can be, a universal kind of consciousness. So yes, this oscillation, this modulation of perception and the one that knows, and it all being the knowing, and then maybe realizing that all perceptions and thoughts and feelings and emotions are made out of the fabric of awareness, and kind of playing with that creates kind of a non-dual experience, and then you can stabilize that, and that also helps with openness. But I'm also a great advocate for concentration practices and mindfulness, because if you don't have a little bit of stability on non-distraction, then this more slippery slope of just being aware without an anchor is a little difficult. So you can maybe practice being aware of being aware, maybe 35% attention on the breath, or wherever you like to rest your attention, and 65% being aware of being aware. You can kind of start playing with all that. It's a beautiful thing. So Nick, it seems like longing for more distracts from knowing this thing. Knowing this thing, do you just sort of let that conflict be in order to come back to that openness? Feeling open and full of heart can trigger a desire to be more open and more full of heart, and then poof, it's gone. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the openness itself can turn into an object, right? And then that object can become then this. You can start desiring that, and there's an attachment to that. So then you realize the spaciousness or the emptiness of that. You notice that there's kind of this reaching. So that's why I said in the beginning, there's stop all wish for self-improvement, all reaching for self-improvement or enlightenment or awakening. Although we're talking about awakening, being in the process of awakening while being awakened. So when when you're the yogi on your seat and going like, oh yeah, I can feel a little bit of attachment to a state of non-thought or bliss or openness, you come to really realize that, and you just it becomes the practice of letting go into that open spaciousness. So you become good at noticing when the attachments are coming in. It's quite clear, really. I mean, you noticed it, otherwise you wouldn't be mentioning it, right? So you notice that arising, and then how that takes a bit of practice. Like, oh, yeah, take a breath. You know, not meditation is not a holding on pattern. It's like taking a breath and refreshing and refreshing. That's why the lamas in the Tibetan tradition, you know, everybody's like meditating. There's all this silence, and they call out suddenly loudly, and everybody is startled. But in that moment of startledness is kind of a drop, right? It is a free fall, like, you know, like, and then you hang over that huge existential spaciousness, something you can play with.
Could you answer Eileen's or respond to Eileen's comment just briefly? We have to take a break in about a minute, but if you could have a look at her.
Did I miss? I'm sorry for missing your.
No, it's okay. She said to rest completely in compassion is to see everything as beautiful and full of love. That's your quote. And she says, I think there is a danger in that. There is an important place for discernment. Can you speak for a minute how discernment plays into this um, wide open awareness of that spacious and loving?
Yeah, okay. So we're working with an ideal right now, and it's like sometimes compassion or love is a fierce love. You know, it's not like this like floaty little like, oh, everything is great and good with the world. You know, so no, sometimes it's fierce compassion that needs some strength, but it's informed not by the habitual egoic patterns of self-protectiveness and whatever, or angry patterns or sad patterns, but an openness indeed. So it's a softer informedness of wisdom, and so yeah, I agree with you. You have to be discerning of where is this compassion come from. My wish to be loved by loving others, although I say yes, we find love through loving. Um, it is indeed, you have to be indeed very discerning, what the origin is of the compassion. But if you're open and spacious and open and aware, and you practice that, and it's resonating in your life, then um, then there is a tendency for compassion to come from love and not from some egoic pattern.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And um, if you could just stay for 1 minute, if anybody wants to just put some appreciation in the chat box for Timo, and then I'd like you to be able to see that, Timo.
Thank you very much. I love being here. This is what my life is about. And thank you for making it possible for me to express myself so lovingly. Maybe not all from a clean and pure place. I like being loved too. But I'm paying attention and try to be as discerning as I can be. And thank you for pointing that out to me. Thank you for your beautiful words. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. Be well. Love you very much too. Be in touch if you wish. I'm here for you. Have a beautiful IPP and a beautiful rest of the day. To sit in Gail's beautiful radiant heart, and I'll be back sometime soon.
Thank you, Timo.
Thank you all. Bye bye. Thank you for your sweet words.
All right. So, how was that? Was that okay? That was big. That was a big thing. It's a lot of, and for some of you, a lot of different concepts and different teachings. And so, find what you resonate with. And if you don't resonate with it, I mean, Diana's book is a more simplified, right? Which are one of your textbooks in terms of open awareness. So, you can take smaller bites. So take a break. Just this is I know we're almost done, but take a break for like come back at about 1:20 and get up and stretch and do whatever you need to do, and we'll just finish up. So see you back in at 1:20. See? Um, I would have done some more probably relational mindfulness, small groups, and we allow what is here to be here, and there were so many good questions and comments about Timo's share, and so we don't have time for small groups, so you can kind of deconstruct it, and also um, how is mindfulness showing up in your relationships? It's relational mindfulness. How is so just rather than small groups, if anybody has anything to share about that, and then I'm going to close with an image of a tree that has many relational aspects to it, and then we'll just be quiet as each of you leave individually, and Sherry and I, as usual, will hold the space as you leave. And um, so, anything just individually about relational mindfulness, how mindfulness is showing up in your relationships or not, and that's relationships with yourself. Yeah, thank you, Jesse. And anything we did today too will be in the newsletter. Relationships with yourself or others, and you might be tired, and if you don't have anything to say, I just wanted to make sure you had a platform to share anything about how mindfulness is showing up in your relationships or not. Oh, Claudia, how beautiful. Hmm. That's a blessing, right?